Welcome to Stoughton Spotlight. I'm your host, Jeffrey Pickett. On this episode, I'm joined by Selectman Peter Brown. You may have seen the October 3rd Board of Selectmen meeting where towards the end of the meeting, after a heated exchange between Pat Colburn and Selectman Peter Brown, Selectman Brown announced his intent to resign immediately from the Board of Selectmen, left the meeting, and of course, there was much discussion in the days following that meeting, including some speculation that Selectman Brown may actually stay on the Board of Selectmen and has not turned in an official resignation in terms of submitting a written form of resignation to either the Board of Selectmen or the Town Clerk's office. So I wanted to bring Selectman Brown in to tell everybody what his intentions are with what happened at the last Board of Selectmen meeting. So Peter, thank you very much for joining me, and I'll start off right away with, are you intending to follow through the resignation, or do you intend to stay on the board?
First off, Jeff, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate the chance to come on. You stated, obviously, the other night there was an incident that I'm not proud of. I want to apologize to the residents. I hope they can understand that it was a heated exchange. It's been a contentious time, this recall. I feel like my family has been under attack. I feel like this board has been under attack. And on that particular night, I crossed a boundary I couldn't control. I basically lost my composure, and I'm not proud of it, and I regret it, and I want to apologize to the residents for that. As far as the resignation goes, I'm gonna see it through. The election is on December 5th.
So you're staying on the board?
I am going to stay on the board, and I'll tell you the reasons why. I had the support. First off, I hastily. I spoke out of turn. I had received a phone call from my daughter after I had lost my composure, and out of frustration, I had a heated exchange with a resident, which again shouldn't have happened, and it won't happen again. I can assure you of that. And my daughter told me that she was extremely upset. She was worried, and it's just stuff that was been mounting up. So I came back out of that room and I announced my retirement. Everybody knows this is a volunteer job. I do it because I love my town, I love the community, and I think I'm trying to make decisions that are better in the town. But after I announced my retirement that day, I did plan on typing a letter and turning it into the clerk and the chairman. I believe that without doing that, my resignation wasn't considered official. So over 2 or 3 days, I had a detailed discussion with my wife and daughter. And I told them about the pros and cons, and the calls, the texts, the emails, even home visits were something that I could have never predicted. It was actually overwhelming in some way and flattering another, certainly humbling. So I don't think it would be fair. And I'm certain that the people who voted for me and appreciates the time I'm given or the decision I'm making, rather see me at least see it through December 5th and let the residents decide then if they want me to stay on or not.
So when exactly did you make the decision that you were going to stay on the board?
I'll tell you, lots of emotions and lots of thoughts went through my mind when I was leaving there. It went from, extreme upsetness to anger to what am I doing this for? I got a couple calls that night. The next day, it was nonstop. I had a conversation with my wife and daughter on Wednesday night at length. My wife absolutely believed I should stay on. She wanted me to promise I'd never get as excited like that again. But my wife was 100% behind it. My daughter was still a little apprehensive. She hears a lot of the stuff going on in school and some of the stories. She's on social media, so she sees a lot of it. And a lot of what I like to say, the hostility towards us. She was apprehensive, but then by Thursday night, I had decided that maybe it's the best interest of at least this board and at this time to stay on. So I haven't officially announced it anywhere. I guess here's the first, although a couple people have asked me since Thursday, and I did tell them I was going to stay through December 5th.
So obviously, it was a contentious exchange. Have you had the opportunity to watch it yet, or see it back?
Jeff, some people might find it surprising that I don't watch any of the meetings.
Actually, I'm not. Many people from all sides of the political spectrum have over the years said that they can't watch themselves, so I'm actually not surprised.
No, I don't watch them. In fact, I don't read the news. I guarantee people would challenge this, but I don't read the news articles of anything that could be perceived as, anger, if you will. In this case, I don't know how to describe it. I lost a word. So I don't look at it because I can't really learn from it once I know what I've done. I know what I did, and it wasn't something I'm proud of. I step up and take the blame for it. I should have never engaged with a resident like that. But I also would like the residents to know that it's important that we got feelings up there too. We're sitting up there. We're in public opinion, day in and day out, and this has been something that's gone on. It's not like we haven't agreed to give a recall. It's not like we've been opposing a recall. I mean, the recall is going to happen. There are going to be people who decide to run against us December 5th. Why can't that be enough? I mean, and every week, it seems the same people come and want to question, and not only question and challenge, which is fine, but accuse and insult and make, I don't know if it's a calculator or something that someone's trying to get a reaction out of me, but I've tried to maintain my discipline, and as I said, I will never make the mistake again, because it's not good. It's not good as an example for my daughter. It's not good for an example for anyone else, and it certainly doesn't get town business done.
Have you spoken with your colleagues on the board, and what would you plan to say at the next meeting when you're back on, the board as one of the 5 selectmen?
Well, I will say that I certainly apologize again for the comments that I exchanged. I will also say I regret, or I would explain to the public that I regret announcing. I mean, that's a serious thing, resigning or not resigning, staying or not staying, serving or choosing not to serve. These are decisions we make daily. So I would ask the board to understand that in that exchange and in those circumstances, sometimes we say things that we don't always mean, and I hope they can understand that I did not submit a letter of resignation, and that I'd like to continue to serve at least till December 5th until the residents have a chance to speak.
Do you anticipate any pushback in terms of from anybody who may oppose you well, you said you were going to resign, you're not doing it now, and kind of taking you told us this is what was happening, why didn't you follow through? Do you expect any pushback, people trying to hold you to that statement that you made on October 3rd at the selectmen meeting?
Well, any of the pushback, I guess, if there was, would be more for the outburst, the fact that I lost my composure. Again, I'm not proud of that, and I could see where people would be disappointed in that. The fact that somebody would want to hold me to a resignation in a volunteer board when we're in a contentious time like this, I would find somewhat surprising and maybe even disingenuous. I think anybody running for the seat on the Board of Selectmen certainly want to win it by beating an opponent, or not just. I won as a write-in candidate, so it's not like that was an easy feat to do. The year before, I ran on the ballot, came in last. The second year, I ran as a write-in candidate and won. I don't think that anyone on the other side or people that are running against me would see that as a challenge. I mean, I don't know why you'd want to hold me to that. I mean, I'm sure if somebody has that opinion, that's their opinion, and they're entitled to have that. If you're asking me, is that legal? I would argue that it's no. The charter calls for an actual resignation, and I believe the board would have to vote, or would have had a vote, to accept my resignation to even have any issues with that.
Have you had a chance to speak to Mrs. Colburn yet?
No, I haven't.
Would you, at the next meeting, if she's in attendance, have take an opportunity to have a conversation?
Absolutely. In fact, I reached out to somebody from their side, I guess, if you want to talk about sides. I hate using that word, but let's be honest. We're at a time in history that the division in this country has never been any worse. In fact, a resident brought it up to us This is a Washington, D.C. event going on in a smaller scale. I happen to agree. Yes, I served 3 years with Ms. Colburn on Finance Committee, not only on the committee itself, but on our subcommittees. She was the chair. She knows her stuff inside and out. She's excellent when it comes to the issues. I think she's really committed to this recall, and I think she wants a change. Maybe she doesn't agree with what we do, to the fact that nothing we can do is right. So that'd be her position, or maybe her opinion. I don't know. I can't speak for that. I haven't had many conversations with her, other than the exchange when she comes before us, and the other night.
So from a political standpoint, you're all in. You're going full tilt as a candidate to fight off a recall effort.
Well, I don't think, first off, anybody running would want an easy win. I don't know even who's decided to run. I've heard that several people have put their names in. I don't know who's chosen to run against me, or I guess declare against me. It would not be fair to the people who supported me and voted for me. And I tell you, Jeff, and I'm really sincere when I mean this, the number of people that contacted me over the resignation, even people that did not always agree with decisions I've made or choices I've did, say this is not the way to leave this. So yeah, I'm all in. December 5th, can't come soon enough.
So obviously that does loom over the Board of Selectmen. There's still meetings for several meetings between now and then. How do you as a selectman go about your business, knowing that there is a different type of an election coming up in a couple of months?
Well, there's a lot of question to that actual question, and it's a great question. First off, we're trying to focus on the business. There's a lot of things happening, as everyone can see. I mean, the high school and the library, and just many other things that often you don't hear. So we try to stay committed and focused on the issues at hand. There's a lot happening up in the town hall in terms of business that is very good. There are things that are going to take place in the future that are hopefully even better. The actual recall election looming over the decisions to, when it comes to any of those, really it doesn't even matter. It doesn't resonate. But the recall itself does, because a lot of things hinge on whether or not this board is together. Right now, you've got a recall of the majority of the Board of Selectmen. This is not a 1 or 2 member that a group is not happy with. You're talking about a majority of the Board of Selectmen that they're not happy with. So I would say 3 out of 5 people they want recalled. I see that as almost as a hostile takeover. Why? And this is something that should be brought up. It's less than 7% of the registered voters that signed those recall lists. Now that's
but that's within the town's laws.
That's correct.
Though.
It's 5% according to the charter. The bylaws state you need 5%. But that charter was written in 1973, or somewhere around there. We have almost 18,000 registered voters. So to get 900 signatures, hey, well done to them. They were at it. They were committed. They saw it through. I won't question that. I would have liked an opportunity to hear the charges. I asked, in fact, I was attacked one night because I asked to invite the petitioner, the person who wrote the charges. You familiar with the charges?
Yes.
I've read the charges. They're a great legal brief or a legal document, but I don't even know what they mean or what they're looking for. We haven't broken any laws. We haven't committed any rule infractions. So I'm still kind of confused on the charges themselves. And why I'm confused is because three of us were charged with 4 of the same charges, and then the chairman was charged with an additional charge. Now, if we as 3 members did, what happened to the 4th and the 5th Board of Selectmen? Now, I know one of the selectmen didn't serve most of the time.
He was elected in April.
Yeah,
right.
I guess just got elected. But the other selectmen did serve. And I think some of the charges, and I got them here, and they refer to certain things, but about the public interest, I believe they're talking about public comments. I don't decide if public comments are made during the evening or not. That's the chairman's agenda. The chairman decides if public comments are there. And in fact, there's no law that requires public comments during a meeting except for public hearings. Public hearings, the public is entitled to speak. I certainly support your constitutional right. You can agree to disagree. You can even come up there and berate me if you wish. But the charges are they're mystifying to me. If three of us are charged with the same charge, and the fourth guy who's still on the board, who was there, he's not charged with it. Now, in addition, there's some rules violations and things. Again, I don't know why somebody else would be excluded from that. Performance evaluation. Now, there's the second charge on this affidavit talks about not providing a performance evaluation for the town manager. Now, two selectmen, Mr. O'Regan and Mr. Cohn, were tasked with putting together a performance evaluation form. I only served on the board not even a year when this performance evaluation thing was coming up. In fact, I agreed that a performance evaluation should be done. That's the only way people will learn. In fact, employees in particular, definitely department heads, should be getting performance evaluation, which they don't. And I asked the town manager at the time if he did that, and he said he did. But on further discussion with other department heads, they didn't receive performance evaluations. Okay, so assuming that the performance evaluations is something that's important, and I'm charged with not doing a performance evaluation. Well, why wouldn't Mr. O'Regan be charged with that? Mr. O'Regan is on the Board of Selectmen. Mr. O'Regan did not provide a performance evaluation, and when I asked him to support it, he said he couldn't do it. And he said that it would be, I think the words were, vindictive and manipulative. And I have that in a text message. I asked him to support a performance evaluation in February of 2016, and Mr. O'Regan responded to me in a text message, and I have it here. I have it for his review, or anyone else for that matter. In fact, I am going to make it available, that he couldn't do that because if he did, it would be perceived as manipulative or vindictive prior to the election, and then if it was done after the election, it would be perceived as vindictive.
Just for clarification, February 2017 or 16?
February 2016.
16.
Yes, okay. February 24th to be exact. I had a series of text messages between myself and Mr. O'Regan. Now remember, in December we issued a letter to the town manager saying that we may not renew his contract. Now, this whole recall supposedly was based on the town manager being fired, that we got rid of him. In fact, I talked with a gentleman in front of the post office. He went to great lengths to put out a video and say what kind of jerk I was or whatever, but this gentleman was out asking for signatures in front of the post office. And I happened to run into him. This was early on when they had their getting the recall papers. And he asked me if I wanted to sign the recall, and I said, the recall? And I said, what's about? And he says, recalling the boss. In fact, you. I said, yeah, you're right. I guess it is about me, but can you tell me what you know about the recall? He couldn't tell me anything about the recall, other than that the town was going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars settling the case with Mr. Hartman. Now, for 20 minutes, I had to try to have a conversation with him, and he wasn't really wanting to listen. I don't blame him. I mean, he's got his talking points. He knows what he wants to say, and he's telling everyone that would listen that I'm not a good guy, and that this is the selectman that we're recalling. Yet he could not intelligently tell me what the actual recall was about, other than the town manager. Now, I happen to know the recall's everything but the town manager at this point. The recall is that we're not good guys. The recall is that we make bad decisions. The recall, everything but the town manager. Seems that the town manager not here anymore may have been the best decision that the chairman and myself and Mr. Cohn has made since we've been on the board. I don't know who's going to be town manager here after December. I don't know who's going to be town manager next year. But what I do know is that the town hall is functioning excellent. The production, the morale, the climate, people are talking to one another, people seem to be happy to be around town hall again. That was not the case under Mr. Hartman.
Well, I certainly will have you back on, as all of the other candidates who are running in the recall election. But, of course, using the final minutes here, just makes sense to talk about some town issues. So continuing on that thread, of course, the appointment of Mr. Anastos is of contention, especially for the group of residents that support the recall. If you could go back, would that be something that you would have done a little bit differently? You certainly speak very highly of him, and you're not alone of the job Mr. Anastos has done as interim town manager thus far, but would you have done the process differently?
Well, first off, I have to say Mr. Anastos is doing an outstanding job. He's committed to the town. He's a resident. He's a taxpayer. He's built successful businesses. He's been a selectman. He knows the issues. He knows the people. He knows the makeup. So as far as that goes, he's doing an outstanding job. Would I vote for him at this point as a town manager? I don't know. I have to see who the other candidates are. As far as Mr. Anastos being the interim and us putting him in place, I think it was the right decision, probably not the wrong, probably not the best way. It was an extremely hostile meeting. It was an extremely short meeting because of all those reasons. We really didn't have a lot of options. When we elected not to renew the town manager's contract, that was relatively quick. And now remember, it happened over a 6 months course, but in December of 2016, we gave him his letter. In April of 2017, after the election, we talked about a search committee. And the search committee was a discussion because if we weren't going to renew Mr. Hartman's contract, we had to put somebody in place. Mr. Hartman immediately served us with a legal documentation, a package probably 500 pages thick, threatening a lawsuit if we even convened a search committee. So we were unable to put a search committee together in April. So leading up to June 30th, when we decided that, or during that meeting, the 27th, I think it was, to not renew his contract, that became a very confusing and trying time. There were employees that were interested in doing the interim job. I was strongly opposed to paying anybody outside the town to do the interim town manager's job. I would have preferred somebody from within acting as interim town manager till this board could have met and put somebody together. 2 members on the board and many members of the public opposed it, didn't want to allow us to do anything like that. They challenged every decision. They created basically havoc. And even though the Attorney General's office came back and ruled that we didn't do anything illegal with the decision of putting in Mr. Rowe, he could sit in there. But at that point, he became flustered. The decision to put Mr. Anastos in as an interim could have been handled much better. Yes, I believe it could have. For example, a resident mentioned the other night that I myself didn't even acknowledge the 10-minute recess to give those gentlemen a chance to read the contract. That's partially true, but the second part of that is I had said to both Mr. O'Regan and Mr. Sullivan, if we gave you 2 weeks to read this contract, you wouldn't approve it. And they both, Mr. O'Regan absolutely confirmed that and said, you're right. So they weren't interested in change, and that was part of the reason why it was so hard to do that.
But they certainly could have had more than a few hours to have reviewed it.
They got that contract the same day I got it. Unfortunately, remember now, we're under the gun for trying to change the actual town manager because the interim was Mr. Rowe. They weren't happy that Mr. Rowe was serving, so we had to find a solution. Mr. Hartman wasn't coming back at that point. And to be honest, I think it was the best decision we made. It was a courageous decision, even though it was a tough decision.
Now, going forward, working with the Board of Selectmen, you certainly hope that after December 5th, it's the same 5 members coming back. But until then, how do you work with your other selectmen, specifically, Mr. O'Regan and Mr. Sullivan, who it seems like right now this is a 3-2 board on almost any decision of substance. Approving a sign for Mrs. Danino, for example, right. That's a common sense. Everybody votes for that 5-0. But when we're talking about matters of any contention, it's a 3-2 board. How do you work with your colleagues?
It's funny you say that. Last week I sent out a policy. I was talked with Katie Pina Enochian, who graciously provided me with a version of their open meeting, and under the public comment section, and I took a look at it, made some revisions, made some changes to fit our meeting style, if you will. I sent it to all board members. I haven't heard one word back from them. The majority of the Board of Selectmen and in any board rules. And it just so happens it's now the majority is the three of us. Obviously, I want to see the three come back. I'm open to work with the other two gentlemen under any circumstances. My hand is always there. People say it isn't, but I have extended my hand. I actually asked Mr. O'Regan prior to this recall getting to the level, let's try to work this thing out. What can we do to try to make amends? But I will tell you also, I believe that if they wanted to be a recall, then maybe that should have included all 5 selectmen. Even though Mr. Solomon just got elected, why shouldn't Mr. O'Regan been on the ballot? And he will be in April. He will be held accountable, or he will have to answer to his conduct and what he's decided, whatever it may be, in April. So yes, I am willing to work with them. I hope they're still willing to work with me, because if December 5th comes and we're still the board, we're going to be the board that has to work in the best interest of Stoughton. I'm hoping they'll understand that.
Now, how can you take what happened last Tuesday at the October 3rd meeting and use it as a learning, something to learn from, and what can you learn from it going forward on our final minute? Tell us what you can learn from it, and how you hope the board can better itself as a result of what you went through last Tuesday.
Well, as I said at the beginning, and I'll say again, I was more embarrassed for myself and my family that I actually crossed the boundary in terms of being undisciplined. I learned that that's not worth it. At the end of the day, we're all people. We all deserve respect, and we all probably, in my opinion, no matter what side or where you sit, have the best interest of the town of Stoughton. So I'm going to be mindful of that at the end of the day. I'm not going to engage in any, rude behavior or conduct.
Will you hold your colleagues to the same if you see that going on?
Yes. In fact, that should be mentioned across the board, that every one of us should withhold snippy comments, and that goes for all 5 people, not just the 3 being recalled.
Well, Peter, thank you very much
Jeff,
for joining me today, and thank you for tuning in to this edition of Stoughton Spotlight. I want to thank Selectman Brown, and of course sharing the news that he will be staying on the Board of Selectmen. So once again, thank you for tuning in, and thank you to Michael Hammond for directing the show. We will see you next time.